Finding that it is 7 o'clock, I'll call this meeting of the Community and Economic Development Authority to order. The first item on our agenda is a roll call. Mike?
Thank you. Clary? Fairchild?
Here.
Hamilton? Here. Hardy? Potts?
Here.
Udell?
Here.
Wheeler?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. We have minutes from the October 27th, 2022 meeting. It has been a while.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The minutes are approved. Item number 4 is public appearances for non-agenda items. We have no members of the public in the chamber. Did anyone submitted a form? Okay, and I don't believe we have anyone online either. Mike, you mentioned taking up the agenda a little bit out of order. If everyone's okay with that, we would actually take up item 5B first.
Yes.
So item 5B under resolutions and ordinances is resolution R-23-23, extending the life of tax increment district number 4 by 2 months to improve housing quality and affordability. Mike, I don't know if you want to lead this in or turn it over to Misty right away.
Sure. We're ready for the closure of tax increment district number, tax increment district number 4 this year. And with that, we want to do the TID for housing extension. So this has been referred to us, and then it'll go to Finance and Council, and our Finance Director, Misty Dodge, is going to take us through the process.
Thank you. So first, TID 4 is the area counted by City Hall. It includes the Fitchburg Tech Campus, and then it goes all the way up to Uptown, and is the TID that we use to pay for that new interchange at Highway 14. So it was an exceptionally successful TID. I started with a base value of about $49 million, and we're going to close it with an incremental value. So this is how much it has grown since then, of $242 million. So it is a very successful TID, one of the largest in the state, not the largest, but one of the top dozen or so. If this resolution is approved, it'll move the increment that we're receiving with the tax bills that people are paying right now, it'll move that into the Affordable Housing Fund. That dollar amount is $4.88 million. This is the third TID now that we're using this strategy for, and by far the largest of them. If this is approved, the use of that money has to be spent primarily on affordable housing, with some money that could go towards general housing. The 3 specific uses identified in the resolution are to incorporate affordable units in market rate buildings, to reinvest or rehabilitate existing multifamily units, and to help subsidize energy efficiency audits and energy upgrades in existing housing. So those would be the 3 goals of this money. Again, if this is approved, all of those are in line with the housing plan that was adopted by the council. Once this is done, we do have 2 months in order to actually close the district. So we're on a bit of an accelerated timeline, very similar to what we did last year with TID 6 closure. So the goal would be that we will approve this affordable housing resolution at the next council meeting. Then I'll refer out that closure right away so that we can have it closed by the magic April 15th date, which will allow us to close it this next year.
Mike?
Sure. I would just reinforce what Misty talked about, the success of tax increment district number 4. This district really did a lot of heavy lifting from an economic development and infrastructure standpoint, everything from projects with Promega and Fitchburg Center to the Fitchburg Tech Campus as we implemented the larger vision for the Fitchburg Technology neighborhood, extending all the way over to the interchange at Highway 14 to start to open up that property. So this is dramatically changed and enhanced the landscape of the city of Fitchburg. And I think it's a great example of how Fitchburg has effectively utilized tax increment finance as a local economic development tool, not only to improve our local economy, create job creation, tax-based growth, but I think now when we're ready to close it, the benefits live on. And it's that last year of increment that all the taxing entities get to kind of share to do one-time projects, which we'll talk about a little bit later with the ARPA and TID dollars update that I'll give a report, but also the housing extension, which for a community with Fitchburg size where we're not an entitlement community, to be able to have this as a source of funds to reinvest back into affordable housing and housing programs is really a valuable tool for us. So it's a win-win-win all the way across the board.
And I guess just to reiterate, because other options within kind of TID closure would be, we'd previously capitalized the business revolving loan fund, but unlike that, or this provision, which is citywide, that would have been limited to the geographic area of the tax increment district?
Yes, because we did that during the life of the district there. Once we closed the district, then those dollars could go citywide, but because we did that during an open and active TID, it was restricted geographically during that time.
Okay, thanks. There, Jim, go ahead.
Mike, I share your enthusiasm about this. You know, one, especially the part about, getting some funds into our affordable housing fund and actually moving forward with our plan. Because I've always said that stable housing, in my opinion, is what's needed and would solve actually a lot of issues when families can have stable housing. And to be able to do that in Fitchburg, at this time, I think is just really excellent. So thank you for all your work and city staff work, on making this happen.
Andy? Oh. And to piggyback on what Jim said there, we're continuing to work with the Housing Advisory Committee, which then kind of advises CETA, Finance, and Council. So the programs and the uses of funds that Misty identified are things that we're having conversations about, not only with CETA, but with the Housing Advisory Committee. So 2023 is going to kind of be a big year here for decisions on how we utilize some of the housing and affordable housing funds, both from TID 6 and now from TID 4 if Finance and Council authorizes.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on the resolution? I will say it's a little weird that I was on the council when the TID was formed, so it's a little weird seeing it closed now. We do have a resolution before us. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve Resolution R-23-23, extending the life of Tax Incremental District Number 4 by 2 months to improve housing quality and affordability.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Hi, this is Joyce. Can you tell me who seconded the motion, please?
Jim Wheeler.
Thank you, Jim.
And Joyce, I got it. I'm taking some notes here that I can pass along to you.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, voting on the resolution, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The resolution is recommended for adoption. Okay, thank you, Misty.
Thanks, Misty.
We will now go back up on our agenda to 5A, approving the 2023-2025 Venture Debt Fund Participation Agreement between the Madison Development Corporation and the City of Fitchburg. Now, hoping Dan would be here, but
This is really a housekeeping item, as you know, and Andy mentioned the revolving loan fund that we capitalized back in 1997. Some years ago, we moved $200,000 of that revolving loan fund money over to our partnership with the Madison Development Corporation, specifically for science and technology companies. And what is really good about that program is they only tap Fitchburg's funds when it's a Fitchburg-based company and request, but it allowed us to kind of leverage our dollars to a larger capital pool that includes everybody from some of the larger regional banks to MG&E and other people that have investments in this portfolio. So it really allowed us to leverage our $200,000 to a wider pool of capital for our smaller science and tech companies. The other good thing about the program is Madison Development Corporation not only has what I would call an underwriting group that looks at it from an intellectual property standpoint and kind of vetting the science and the technology. So they've got some experts in, biomedical information technology to do that vetting. But then they also have a financial underwriting committee made up of people from financial institutions in the banking world there. So it's really a great partnership for us. Dan is our representative on that group, but the action item before you today is we have a 3-year kind of rolling agreement with them that we just have to kind of formally renew with them. You might remember there was a recent request that didn't come forward, but Platypus Technologies was potentially looking at a loan. They're located over here in the Fitchburg Technology campus, but at this point in time they decided not to proceed. But this is a helpful tool in our toolkit for some of those smaller science and technology companies that we're working with. So I'd encourage support for a renewal of that agreement.
I guess I would echo that. Again, as Mike mentioned, we do have the revolving loan fund, and initially when we were kind of running that, we were doing a lot of the work ourselves, and while I think CETA can figure out if we want to make a loan to a gym to buy equipment, there's Dan. I think when we were getting into kind of the high-tech businesses, I think CETA is a great committee, but we don't necessarily have the expertise to do that type of vetting. And this was a great tool for us to actually get in with people, as Mike said, with sort of backgrounds in science and technology who can actually look at the product that a business is trying to develop and kind of give the thumbs up. And then the larger pool of funding and really the kind of more stringent financial underwriting that maybe this committee just isn't capable of doing. So I think this has been a great partnership. We haven't had a ton of business with them, but I think when we have, it's been generally successful. Mm-hmm. But I see Dan is on the screen now. Dan, we're on the Venture Debt Fund Participation Agreement. I don't know if you had anything you would like to add to this discussion. You're muted, Dan.
Am I hearing not being heard now?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, I reviewed the agreement when it went out at the end of November, and I'm all in favor of it. We don't have much activity on the account because of the limited companies applying for loans located in Fitchburg. But when the companies in Fitchburg do make the application, it's a wonderful opportunity to have their applications vetted by experts. So I'm all in favor of it.
Okay, this is an action item, so we would need a motion. Okay, it's a motion by, motion in a second. So, Joyce, so that was Mark and Randy. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This item is approved. Now on to item number 6, hotel room tax report considerations. We do have a request from Race Day Events for a hotel room tax for their event coming up in July.
And we've got Brad from Race Day Events who's joining us via Zoom to kind of take us through some preview of the event coming up, and then also the fireworks request. And then after he's done, if you can kick it back to me. I haven't had a chance to talk to him and Ryan at Race Day Events, but I just want to chime in on the fireworks request with some additional information.
Okay, yeah, so I'll give a brief overview of the Fitchburg Festival of Speed on Saturday, July 8th again. Still various types of events, a 25-mile bike ride, a 5K run walk, something we are adding to that this year to increase some popularity as a police first fire category. The criterium, which is kind of a big highlight of the day, a kids race, still have the 1 mile contest, that race. We're no longer making it so you have to qualify, so opening it up to more people. You don't have to run the 5K and qualify to participate in that. And then the festival portion, looking to increase our food options, keeping some good local bands that'll be performing throughout the day. And then hopefully a great fireworks show. Thanks to you all.
Sure. The request that they have on the form is for $6,000. I'd ask for maybe a little bit flexibility of that up to $8,000. The reason being is I saw a great display last year up in my hometown of Wausau, and just this week made contact with the actual fireworks company that did that display. And so I want to pass that information along to Brad and Ryan and introduce them to this company as they're looking at vendors and everything. But I think what the quality and the quantity was of what I saw in Wausau was good bang for your buck there for it. So I'll share that information. So if we could kind of go up to 8,000, based on my phone conversation with this gentleman, that would give us some sufficient financial capacity to do this. And we actually have a line item in our budget for kind of marketing and promotion, and that's the line item that the fireworks would come out of through the room tax dollars. I just came up with it off the top of my head. Yeah.
He's been workshopping it for weeks.
And one of the reasons to have this on the schedule this early is so race day events can solidify all the details for the Fitchburg Festival of Speed, and then we can really promote and market and utilize this time to promote and market not only to the cycling community, but also to our Fitchburg community to encourage them that this is a community event and that they should come out for this.
We have there last year, so I was not at last year's event, which was post-COVID. As we make it a community event, that's where I'm going with this string of questioning, just a question.
Brad, did you want to take that one?
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
I'm sorry, Brad. I'm Mark Hamilton, and I'm also a biker, and I've come over a couple of years to watch the event and had a great time, but I've never seen 3,500 people or 5,000 there. And I guess where'd your estimate come from that as we move forward and look to support it as a town?
Well, I have numbers based on like the participation. So like the 25 mile, we're looking at 100 people, 150 in the 5K, over 200 in the criterium. Kids races usually pretty small, 25 or so, 50 for the 1 mile. So you have probably around 500 participating people. As for the community aspect, that's where we look to increase the festival a little bit, having some better food options and more entertaining things to do throughout the day and good bands to really draw people to come out there to make it more of a festival atmosphere and an all-day event that people can enjoy.
Thank you.
I would just add to that, because I've been out there, I think every year. You know, when we kind of launched the Fitchburg Festival of Speed, it was pre-COVID, and we were building momentum. Then, of course, COVID hit and everything shut down, and we lost the momentum of that. Then we relaunched, on it, and I could say that the crowd was larger last year than it was the 2 previous years, and they brought in, they went with the strategy of bringing in kind of local bands that had a following, and I think that was effective for it. The food and beverage that they had, I think people consumed there. In a recap from last year, when Angela and I met with them, we talked about trying to offer more food options for people, and kind of, it gets a little tricky because I think, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that this is the same weekend as the art fair on the square, or we kind of bump up against that one. So sometimes it's a matter of can we get some of those food carts or food vendors, but there might be competition for those. But what we talked about in the recap meeting was maybe they don't need to be out there all day long as the race is going on. You have one kind of provider that's there during the bulk of the day. But then as we get towards that evening when the bands will be coming out and the race will kind of be, the ending of the race there, could we have some additional food options that would kind of come out at that time? And then we also talked about from a messaging standpoint to the larger community of Fitchburg that maybe aren't cycling, enthusiasts there to come out for kind of the end of the race, to kind of see the culmination of it and then stay for the bands, the food, and the fireworks and really make it more of that community kind of at the end. So that was some messaging that we talked about as we work like with the neighborhood associations and some of the promotion and marketing. So that way people don't feel like they have to come out the whole day, families and things like that.
So I agree that increasing the food and the bands is a great idea, but I've spoke to many residents that they thought it was just a cycling event. And so the marketing part of it, I mean, going back onto Mark, like how are people finding out about this event and what is being advertised about it? Because it's primarily focusing on the cycling, which I understand it's Festival of Speed. But there were many questions that I had, like, why are we having fireworks? Mm-hmm. People weren't significantly aware that there was this party essentially happening on the Fitchburg Tech campus. So along with having the fireworks being increased, but if you're not going to have the attendance or the awareness that this is happening, the increase of funds doesn't really make sense.
And that's, you hit right on the head of what we recapped with them from last year, is that there needs to be kind of a different message to different audiences there. And I know Joyce last year at the end pushed the information out to our neighborhood associations to help get the word out, but it was late, as far as the communication, the messaging. So that's why we wanted to get them here early this year to solidify the activities, the agenda. Hopefully then they can work with the food vendors, the bands, and then we can really start to promote and get that out. But I think you're right. There's multiple audiences that we have to kind of communicate to, and to our residents and to the neighbors. We have to communicate that this is a community festival that they should come out for, and cycling is an aspect of it.
Question. You mentioned that this is on the same weekend as Art Fair in the Square. I mean, has that been looked at as well? I mean, that is such a visible presence in the community. Does it play into the attendance here, or we're going to find that out, or after marketing? It just seems, are there not other weekends that this works as well instead of competing against such a popular draw in the Madison area? Maybe those that attend aren't interested in the other, but I mean, I don't know. I think it just warrants a question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'd kick that over to Brad, because I think part of it is this is I don't know what the right term is in the cycling world as far as a sanctioned race.
It's the state championship for the criterium, so it kind of has to be on this weekend.
Okay, all right.
Mike, if I can make another point.
Yep.
I think it's 2 points. So if you look at marketing, go to the surrounding communities too. Verona, Oregon, and Angela can help you guys do that, and race days. Second of all, there's so many events in the summer, because I work with the Boys and Girls Club Ride, and it's July 17th. And it's the same day as, I think, 100 Black Men's Run. There's a gospel run that day. And so everything during the summer is competing with something else. Mm-hmm. And you can't ever do anything July 4th weekend. You don't want to do that. So it depends on how they fall and don't fall.
Sure. No, I know it's very difficult, but I felt the question warranted.
The Art Fair?
Yeah.
That's the big one in Madison. You're right.
Yeah.
Joyce, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Mike and I had talked about this a little bit too, and I think this goes out to a bigger question about communication throughout the community, not just on this event, but in general. How do we get the word out about different things that are happening, not only community-wise, but events that are happening within the city? So I think we have some avenues of ways we can work and be creative. We did reach out last year, not only to the neighborhood associations, but we reached out to a lot of the larger housing complexes who did blasts to their residents. And that was a huge plus, because the feedback that we got is people could walk there and they enjoyed that. So I think there's some ways that we can utilize other avenues than just, trying to spread the word via your, people sharing it. Sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. If I think of what else I want to say, I'll let you know. But I think it goes back to not just this event, but, the concerts. Until something's established, it takes a bit to get the word out about people coming. And I think once the event's established, then, people enjoy it, they remember it, and they'll keep it on their calendar.
And I guess to the attendance, and Mike, you and I were both there last year, and we've been basically every year. It wasn't 5,000 people, but it was a significantly larger crowd than there have been in prior years. I'd say at least 1,000 people were there. I mean, and I guess to Jennifer's point too, ran into people there who I know have absolutely no interest in cycling. They found out that there were bands in a beer tent, and that's why they were there. But for sure, we could do a much better job
All the
of
wrong
getting it to
reasons.
people. But for sure, I think they could do a lot more in reaching out. But there were definitely people who I ran into there who I know don't follow cycling or cycle racing at all.
As I made my comments, I want to clarify, I support this because it goes with our bike-friendly nature in Fitchburg. And second of all, I like the community aspect of it being pushed up because, again, that bike racing is going to interest a very few small number of people. They're going to be over there for the other events. And so whatever we do, I think we encourage. It sounds like you had some good ideas last year. I'm looking at you, Mike, but for you and Joyce, I'm looking at you too, Joyce, hi. That we support that and if we're going to move this forward, because there is a potential and there are other things. There are not going to be any weekends that are free. As you get into the fall, you're in Badger football. And it just kind of rolls that way. So I think this is good for the city. I think we need to try and help it go on. And I think the fireworks, if that's a piece of it that people like to enjoy, then let's think about supporting your resolution.
And
Yeah.
On the fireworks front, the first year that we had fireworks pre-COVID, they were awesome, the company that we had and everything. Then we had to stop for a couple of years for COVID. Then the year that we brought back the festival and the fireworks, that was the year you might remember where there were shortages of fireworks, and some communities even canceled theirs altogether. So it was a lackluster show that year. Last year was better, but like I said, when I saw this one at Wausau, I'm like, oh, what's the value of this fireworks compared to what we're investing in it? And so I think there's a chance to, again, have a more robust show if we maybe check out and work with Race Day on checking in with multiple vendors for the fireworks specifically.
Brad, do you guys have the band secured for the end of the event? Because that's huge. I mean, you had Super Tuesday last year. They have their own huge drawing. So I think once you have the bands narrowed down, the quicker we can get that information out to the public, the better turnout that you're going to have. Do you know where you're at with contracts for entertainment throughout the day?
Yeah, I don't think they're all locked in, but there was some discussion last week with Ryan and mentioned that Super Tuesday again might be another option of one of the, I think, 3 that we're looking to have. But trying to stick with that, some local bands that have a following that people know and want to come see in person. But yeah, we're working on getting those all locked in.
I would maybe just add and chime in. As someone who books live music for myself, I'm booked through September. So if you're using that as a selling point to try and get people, that's same with food carts. I booked stuff for my son's PTO back in November for an event in May, and if we're competing against, a major Dane County event with food carts, if we're suggesting that those are going to be things that are going to be a draw, I'd say it's a little bit, it needs to happen sooner rather than later. And so if, you want a successful event with that, those are things that really I would want to see prioritized if we're going to then put money towards something like fireworks as well.
And I guess just one other piece I would add to Brad's point of the attendees that are actually participating in like the criterium. I think that's a big draw that the genesis and the origin of these funds are room tax dollars, which are generated when somebody stays in a hotel. And I think those are hundreds of people coming in from out of town. Even if it's not the community draw to have the big bike race, that's for sure a big hotel driver. And I think it actually, if we're kind of looking at the statutory requirement that the events we're putting on are driving room tax dollars, I think that certainly this event meets that criteria.
Brad, I just got an email that the Jimmies, which is a local band that has a huge draw, that their calendar is free. So that might be another one. They have a huge draw, and they're from like the New Glarus area.
Great, I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll definitely look into that right away.
Is there any further discussion on this?
So I think that increasing the fireworks is a great idea. There were many residents that were sitting outside on their lawn watching the fireworks. I think it's a fantastic idea to increase this, and I second Andy's comment, whether or not this goes to fireworks or not, this is a huge hotel benefit as well. We could talk all day about the details about which food carts and bands, and I'm hoping to put confidence in Brad to think that, the details of getting this festival bigger than last year is going to be, part of their priority here, and to continue to increase this as well. But I do think that increasing the budget for the fireworks and making this a community event as well as a race day or like a cycling event would be great. So I do think this is a great idea.
I just have a question for Sita, because you hit on something, Jennifer, and we struggled with this even when Fitchburg Days was going on at McKee Farms Park. We had some awesome fireworks shows as part of that festival, but one thing we struggled with was I would hear from people, oh, great fireworks, but they watched them from their house, and they didn't come out for like the food and beverage and the band. So if anybody has suggestions on how we get some of these folks that are kind of having house parties, to actually come down, to the festival and to the location there, please pass those along to us, because even with Fitchburg Days, you would hear from people that, oh, we had a house party and the fireworks were great and we really enjoyed it. And it's like, why didn't you come down and, kind of enjoy the community and the bands and the beer and the food?
Plant more trees.
What?
Plant more trees so people can't see over the trees.
Oh.
So they have to come down.
Joyce is on?
Dan and I discussed this in our private meeting.
I can't see the fireworks from my house on Wayland Road.
If we moved them down by Dan, then we'd force people to come to the event.
And the agricultural community would appreciate it much.
All the deer out there.
And a coyote.
All right, is there any further discussion or a motion on this item?
Right, I'll make a motion that we support, you're asking for the fireworks, right, Mike? Yes. I asked.
And 8,000.
Yeah, that we make an $8,000 reserve for the fireworks for the Fitchburg Festival Speed, but I'm going to add a codicil to it that we work on continuing to enhance the marketing efforts.
I'll second that.
I would add that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I
Those opposed, nay. That item is approved. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks,
Thank
Brad.
you all for your time.
And thanks, Sita, for that support. Like I said, we kind of got disrupted here with COVID as we were trying to ramp up and build the festival, so then we had to start over again. So we're going to try this and see if we can build it to the level that our investment warrants there. So hopefully we can continue to build the size of the attendance and the crowd this year. So thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the revolving loan fund. So review and discuss revolving loan program.
And I just put this on the agenda to hopefully start a discussion. This was a program, again, that we launched in 1997. It really hasn't been utilized much through the years here. This is the local one that CETA administers. And I think in the packet and previously we had included the guidelines for you. And I'd like you just to give some thought. I need to do some more due diligence. One of the things I wanted to do is share the guidelines with some of our local banking community there and get their perspective. I had a meeting with the business bankers at Oak Bank on Tuesday morning and just gave them a Fitchburg development update. So I'd like to check in with some of their folks and have them review the guidelines and kind of see, are there some gaps with our program that are out there that could maybe complement small businesses that they're working with, that we could kind of be a catalyst to work together to drive some business activity. And one question, and I know that the restaurant and retail sectors are the riskiest sectors out there. And, you know, we've excluded kind of restaurants and alcohol establishments previously, and retail is a sector that isn't necessarily identified as a priority. But yet those are some of the things that make a community unique when you're talking about those kind of place-based, you know, food and beverage or retail and shopping. And so I just would like to start the conversation, maybe do some more research, maybe have a subcommittee of this group to look at the program a little bit more and in more depth. And are there some changes that we could make that where the program would be utilized better, but that still kind of protected the city as much as we can? We can't eliminate all the risks, but are there some ideas that are out there? The other thing I'm going to do, because I heard from some people offline that maybe some of our peer communities have some guidelines, and I want to get a copy of theirs as well to see how they're utilizing their program, especially one in particular is Verona. But just recently, as you might remember, we moved over, I think it was $100,000 of the dollars or $150,000 for the Biz Boost program to help our businesses emerge from COVID. And that was risky, you know, when we did that. But I think on a positive note, and Joyce, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've got 100% or we're close to 100% repayment of those funds, including, you know, a couple of food or restaurant-related businesses there. So that's kind of why I just wanted to maybe start a conversation on it and see if there's some updates and changes that we would like to do, but also acknowledging that if we would, let's say, start to open up to the restaurant and retail categories, that there would be a lot more risk with those types of businesses. So it's kind of a cost benefit there. But if anybody's got any thoughts to help direct me as we do some more due diligence, you know, please pass those along, or we can also have offline conversations as well. And like I said, I'm going to do more research with our local banks and local communities, and then we'll bring it back for a more in-depth conversation after I've had a chance to do some of that information gathering.
Mike, have you, when you meet with businesses coming into Fitchburg, do you ask them about their financing needs and whether we can be of help to them?
A lot of times, Dan, some of them will bring it up, you know, to us, and a lot of times we'll refer them to an organization like WIBIC, the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation. That's a small business lender there. But we've had some requests. There was just a recent one for, I would say, an established business that is in the beverage world there that was asking the question of, did we have a program available to help them specifically with the cost of the Class B liquor license, which is $10,000, which is a pretty significant amount to come up with, up front. And this is somebody that's already got a couple of established locations and will be looking to open up another one here in Fitchburg. In that situation, our program, doesn't allow for that, but we did refer him to the Dane County has a revolving loan fund program, 2 different ones. And I gave him that information, and he was going to check into that to see if that could be a possibility, for him. So Dan, it kind of depends on the business that we're talking to, and if they've got their financing lined up. And that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to reach out to the bankers, is to find out, as they're working with some small businesses, where are gaps that they're seeing with financing, and could we kind of be a partner to fill in some of those gaps? So I need to have more conversations on that.
As with the loan fund that I work with on behalf of the city, those people are coming in looking for loans of $300,000 to $500,000 in order to get over the hump and make their next move upward. We don't have any means to support those types of requests. Do we have any idea how much money we would have to put on the table in order to be a viable lending source for these businesses?
And Dan, which program are you referring to? Is that with the City of Madison?
With, City of Madison, MG&E, and all the banks.
Oh, you're talking venture debt?
Venture debt, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's the program for the science and tech companies. Our local pool of dollars here is kind of more for the, it was meant to kind of be more for the, local place-based, kind of market businesses and maybe some smaller, manufacturers or specialty companies. So I think it's 2 different kind of programs in 2 different sectors.
I understand, but my point is, if I'm going to open a restaurant, which we don't support, I think I saw some figures of around $350,000 for the equipment to start it operating. And then you're going to have working capital. So you got at least $5,750,000. I mean, we don't have the type of financial wherewithal to support that type of business, do we?
No, and I'm not looking for us to be kind of the sole source of financing or capital, for them. I think we're there to kind of be maybe a partner or fill in a gap, to kind of round it out to be a catalyst to help make the project happen, but not the sole source or the major source of funding, for them.
Then there's not going to be much in the way of security left over, is there?
No.
We're going to be hanging out there by the good faith of and success of the party to whom we lend the money.
Like I said, the recent example was the alcohol-oriented one that was looking for some dollars to help with the upfront, kind of Class B liquor license.
If you're going to open a tavern or a restaurant and have a $500,000 investment, and you're getting worked up over a $10,000 license fee, I have some suspicions about the good faith of that request. That's all.
Like I said, we'll do more research and information gathering, and then we'll bring it back for kind of further discussion and see if there's any changes and updates that we'd like to do. I think the other thing that I need to do, and Joyce and I need to do, is and part of the reason for reaching out to the banks is just to market and promote that we do have this program. And so even as the banks are working with some people, again, if there is a portion that they can't fill, or we can help complement or supplement there, maybe that would generate more interest and more usage of the program as well.
Okay.
And I guess I would just I would agree that it's probably time to review this. I think it's been 15 years since we really did a major overhaul, and that's when we had a restaurant come in who was looking for funds. We did not, I think at that point, we had sort of an informal policy that we didn't support restaurant businesses with loans, but there was nothing in our guidelines, so we did a fairly major revision of the guidelines then, but it's been probably 15 or 16 years, and it's probably long overdue that someone actually looks at this again.
One other idea I had, and again, I still have to have more conversations, but as we partner with folks like our friends at the Latino Chamber and the Black Chamber, who have kind of incubator and business training programs there, would there be any way to partner with them that people and entrepreneurs and businesses that have gone through their program and are kind of ready to launch, that we could be, you know, again, a source of funding for some of those businesses? So just more ideas to kind of explore and see if there could be further collaboration and partnerships with those organizations. You know, now with the Latino Chamber having purchased the Roughing It in Style building on Verona Road at 5262 Verona Road, they're envisioning that to be an entrepreneurial kind of gateway in the community. In fact, I just met with a young gentleman on Monday of this week who's looking to start his own business, and referred him to the Latino Chamber and also to WIBIC. He came to the Chamber event last night, and he's already connected with the Latino Chamber and is going to hopefully go through their kind of incubator and small business training program. So I think there's, you know, additional opportunities for collaboration with them.
All right, great. Are there any other comments, suggestions for Mike and Joyce?
I would just mention we may tap into some of you folks for maybe a little small subcommittee as we make further progress.
All right. Seeing nothing further, we'll turn it back over to Mike for Economic Development Director and committee member reports.
Sure. And I've got various topics to kind of update on. So I'll be jumping around here a little bit, but cover various topics and updates for you. So the first one is we heard from our friends at B-Cycle, and with the fairly seasonal and weather here that we've got, they're looking at maybe an early installation of some of the first phase of the bike systems for the B-Cycle launch. That'll happen kind of in later March and early April there. So I'm just going to flash up here a map quick. You might remember we're participating with $60,000 in the launch, or $50,000 in the launch phase here. And so the first ones would be the black dots that you see on this map. So we have Hatchery Hill, we've got McKee Farms Park, we've got one over here by Seminole Highway and McKee Road, kind of in that Oak Bank area. We've got Fitchburg Center down here. Then we've got the Limerick over here, and then we've got Terra Vesa. So those are the 6. And Helen had reached out to us from B-Cycle, and they're hoping to work with Phil Groupie, who staffs the bike committee and has been coordinating with Mark and other folks, part of the B-Cycle team, to start to get that infrastructure in the ground. The early ones would be where we already have the pad sites kind of put down, and they can get them in. So that way, when we're ready to launch in March and April with the actual activation of the program and these stations, we're ready to go. And then the next thing that you'll see is with the other grant dollars that we're getting would be then I think it's the green dots, Mark?
No, it's kind of fluid right now. We've got 6 to 8 sites identified, and what we're focusing on with that second phase is the underserved areas of our city.
Okay.
So people can get to the library, can get downtown. Places like, well, the library is one, of course. The neighborhood hub as it goes in. So, yeah, we're the Boys and Girls Club McKenzie Center. So we're focusing on those areas of town. But that's all. We're trying to get the phase 1 done and then let phase 2 continue to evolve. But there is money available through 2026 for that phase two. So,
So with the equipment coming in for phase one, we now will also, and Helen is sending us the invoice for CETA's contribution, and then we'll be cutting that check. So we'll be processing that, because as part of our agreement with them, we wanted to make sure that the equipment was in and installed before we process that invoice. So that'll be coming forwards. So just an update for you on that program as we proceed with that. And again, thanks for CETA's support for the 50,000, because there again, we were a catalyst to move forward the B-Cycle program here in Fitchburg. Then the next thing I wanted to just give you an update on is TID number 10, which is the tax increment district up in North Fish Hatchery Road. And we've been having just some internal conversations as staff as we look at some development activity that's occurring. It also involves possibly the housing program, some infrastructure needs and things like that. So we may be coming forward to council, finance, the elected officials, policymakers, and this body to potentially look at doing an amendment to the tax increment district that is up there in number 10. And I'm flashing up the map here for you. So some of the areas that we may look at when you do an amendment, sometimes it's an amendment of the project plan just to add kind of projects and capacity to it. Sometimes it's a territory amendment. In this case, I think we'd be looking at both categories here. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a preview of what we might be thinking about, and we're checking in with our financial advisors, Ellers, on what's possible. As you might remember, when we created it initially, and now we did one amendment already, it's a rehabilitation district. So as part of the state statutes here, 50% of the property has to be in need of rehabilitation and or conservation as part of that requirement. We can do up to 4 amendments for the district, so this would be our second amendment if we would ultimately proceed with this. But the 2 areas that we're looking at geographically to possibly amend the district would be over here. This is kind of Index Road back in here, and you can see this area that I'm circling right here is not currently in the district. And we may look to add this land and kind of square it off. And 2 reasons for this is, as you travel up North Fish Hatchery Road and you get close to Greenway Cross, there's a lot of, in a good positive note, a lot of traffic, which is great for businesses and things like that, but a lot of congestion too, as far as getting in and out of different businesses up there. And then we've got some U-turns that are happening, and so a lot of conflict points there. So one of the things we want to kind of evaluate, and Public Works is going to take a look at this on this east side of Fish Hatchery Road, west of Index Road. Are there some, what they call in the Public Works and engineering world, some, instead of a frontage road, kind of some backage roads that we could create in kind of the back of some of those front parcels that are along Fish Hatchery Road. So, and then is there a potential east-west connection, especially where McDonald's is? And then as you would continue to the east between, we've got a dialysis clinic and a sleep clinic back there, and that property is kind of underutilized from the built environment. So there could be room there to kind of punch through an east-west out to Index Road. So Public Works is going to take a look at that and kind of analyze maybe what it would take from an easement standpoint to, and could we create kind of better connectivity and efficient network up there. So that would be one from a public infrastructure standpoint. Now I'm going to flip over to our housing dollars and housing fund. One of the items that Misty mentioned for TID 4 and that we're having some conversations about is a strategy to look at, could we come up with a program to encourage developers to incorporate affordable housing units in market rate buildings? So instead of it being an all affordable building that was financed with WHEDA tax credit section 42, could we come up with a program, and it could be using two different tracks from a financing standpoint. One would be the TID for housing dollars, which, you know, if the council ultimately authorizes those through TID 4, that could be one bucket. But we don't always have a regular source of replenishing those dollars. That's going to be intermittent as far as when we have a tax increment district closing. So the other option to finance that would be through an open and active TID district, through the development incentive kind of bucket and category in the project cost list there. So we're going to be working with our financial advisors, Ellers. They're putting together a scope of work for me to kind of evaluate maybe putting together parameters of a program and a strategy like that. Where we learned about this was we went on a field trip to Shorewood Hills and the Boulevard building on University Avenue, and then the Lodge buildings directly across from Target at Hilldale. John Fladd did those buildings. And I had reached out to John because I saw the Boulevard building, and I was like, boy, that's an awesome kind of mixed-use building with retail, commercial on the first floor, apartments above. And I said, John, why don't you come out to Fitchburg and do a building like that? And then he invited us out to come and tour the building. So Mayor Aaron went. This was still when Sonia was with us. She went, and Joyce and I went. And as we were touring the buildings, John shared with us that they incorporated 10% of the units in those buildings are affordable at 60%, and he worked with the Village of Shorewood Hills for TID participation to kind of be the incentive and to kind of cover the economics of that. So that's how we learned about it, and we want to do some more evaluation and vetting of that idea to see if that's another model to encourage more affordable housing units, new stock here in Fitchburg. So that's part of the reason why we're having that discussion internally as staff. But Mike and Ned from Adventure Capital are looking at this lot right here. So north of where they're constructing the Oshala building right now, east of UW Credit Union, they're potentially going to be bringing forward a building. It's on the Avalon kind of senior housing site here to do about 173 units. And they are open to the idea of exploring, TID for or affordable units within market rate with us. So that's another reason to potentially include this property if we were to amend the district, and then continue to explore with our financial advisors the parameters of the program. So I'm just kind of putting that out there as a potential idea as we have further discussions about it. Then the other territory amendment that we would make up here north of the boundary of the district right now at Fish Hatchery Road, Greenway Cross, and then the belt line is off this map here. This is the area that was formerly the town of Madison that just became Fitchburg at the end of October. So it's the Zimbrick dealerships up on Fish Hatchery Road, and then it includes Bryant Road through here, and then the first kind of strip of parcels here just west of Bryant Road. And one of the reasons for including this area in the district, if you've driven on Bryant Road recently, it's in need of a major reconstruction and upgrade and reinvestment. We've got Kavanaugh Supply up there, Badger Sporting, the Zimbrick dealerships and everything. So that's another reason from a public infrastructure standpoint of why we may look to amend the district from a geographic standpoint, and then we would put that in the list of project cost items. So engineering is going to be putting together an estimate of that as well. But so far this district is doing well. We've got enough valuation right now in the district with what we've got that we know that we can pay the bills for the reconstruction of Fish Hatchery Road. As you remember, our hope was that if we built it, that with our public sector investment, that the private sector investment would come, and that's definitely happening there. But we want to keep that momentum going and really transform this area that developed when Fitchburg was still a town into the city of Fitchburg of today. And there's other projects already that we're having conversations about that aren't public, but we're definitely generating interest up here in the corridor. So I just wanted to give you a preview, just more informally, but it's just some internal conversations we're having, and you might hear more about that once we get more additional information from our financial advisors as far as what's possible, and then we would come forward to the policymakers and elected officials to see if there's interest in moving forward on that front. Any questions related to that? Oh. Okay, we'll continue to move on then. More updates for you. Joyce and I met with City Administrator Chad Brecklin Tuesday of this week. Now I'm on the housing programs again. As you might remember, with TID number 6 and the $2.67 million that went into the Affordable Housing Fund, we've been talking to the Housing Advisory Committee and CETA and Finance and Council about a potential rent-to-own program. As we, continue to do analysis on that, administration asked us to do more due diligence. So over the last probably 6 months, Joyce and I, along with our housing consultants, Mike Harrigan and Steve Affelbach from H&A Advisors, we've been reaching out to other potential partners just to get their insight on the idea of the program, and then could there be potential partners that we could collaborate with that would help us with the management and oversight of the program, knowing that we don't have a lot of staff capacity here internally. So over the last 6 months, we've had conversations with folks, everybody from Madison Development Corporation, who has a workforce housing fund, the Urban League, who did a rent-to-own single-family program, Hope Community Capital, the Dane County Housing Authority. So we gave Chad an update on that, and now with that further due diligence, he's given us the green light to continue to work with Mike and Steve to pursue some of the legal analysis that we would like to have done. So there's going to be a scope of work that'll come out, and we will probably issue an RFP for some of that legal work, and it'll focus on a couple of different areas. One would be, what would be those agreements that we would have if we were to do a project? What would be the agreements between the city, CETA, and then a developer builder? And remember, we were talking about kind of a 10-unit townhome project. And then the other one would be, what would be kind of the structure of an agreement with a management company? So if a project was actually launched, a pilot project, and built, then the management company that would oversee it during that rent-to-own kind of phase. So that's 2 tracks of the scope of work. But the other thing, and some of the concerns and questions that administration, I know policymakers have, is what is the ultimate risk and liability to the city as a whole with the overall program by virtue of essentially CETA owning that project and property during the rent-to-own phase. So we want to vet that more with some legal folks, and then there's also some folks in the legal world that have had some experience specifically with like the Dane County Housing Authority and are very knowledgeable in that area. So that's going to be the next kind of scope of work that we're going to do to evaluate that program further. And then hopefully once we've done that, then we'll bring that information back to this group, the Housing Advisory Group, and then ultimately the policymakers and the council to say, here's the information we've gathered, here's the due diligence that we've done on the program, and then they can give us direction on, do we want to pursue a project, or is there too much risk and uncertainty that we'd rather not pursue a project like that? So I just wanted to give you an update because I know people are like, okay, well, where are we at with the program, at this point in time? And that's what we've kind of quietly been doing over the last 6 months. And we want to go to this next phase. And then I think we'll be at a decision point with the information that we've gathered in the due diligence to, again, be at a decision point for the elected officials. And I see Joyce has her hand up, so she might have something else to add.
Not on this, but I just wanted to mention the North Fish Hatchery Road project has received 2 pretty significant awards, with a 3rd one to be announced soon. So that's exciting news for the city that the gray hairs that we got putting that whole TIF district together actually was a good thing. So watch for that 3rd announcement coming out, and the two other ones will be in our annual report.
Anything else on the housing program? The information that I just provided, any questions on that? So stay tuned as we continue to do further due diligence on that program. Then switching to ARPA TID investment plan, the mayor released his plan last week. We as department heads were able to submit input and ideas, and this is using the federal funds, ARPA, but then also the TID 6 and the TID 4 kind of one-time increment dollars there. So just a couple of items I wanted to highlight that are in the investment plan that was proposed by the mayor. The two neighborhood plans, South Stoner Prairie and Greenfield, are on that list. So we're going to be doing two neighborhood plans starting in 2023. The RFP for the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan, which is the one on the far west side of the city at Lacey Road and Fitcherona Road, is going to be issued yet in January this month. And then the schedule for that will issue the RFP, hire a planning consultant, and then the timeline for that is to kind of have the work of that neighborhood plan done by the end of 2023. And then the second neighborhood plan that we're going to be working on is the Greenfield neighborhood plan over here on the east side along Sain Road and around the Greenfield subdivision, one of those rural residential subdivisions that developed when Fitchburg was still a town. So that'll be released shortly after the South Stoner Prairie one. The work on that one probably will be completed in the first half of 2024. And part of the reason for that is since there's the rural residential subdivision, there's a larger resident population base there. So it's probably going to take a little bit more public input and participation, on that one. There will also be public input and participation with South Stoner, but there's a lot more stakeholders that actually live in the geographic area over here with Greenfield. But both of those neighborhood plans will be moving forward in 2023 as far as the process there. And then the process that we follow is because those areas are outside the urban service area, but they're identified as future urban development areas in Fitchburg. First, we do the neighborhood plan, and then once we complete that, then we can go forward to CARPC, the Capital Area Regional Plan Commission, for the request for the urban service area extension. One thing that's going to be different as far as this process and working with CARPC, usually in the past we finish the neighborhood plan, and then we have to kind of take another 3 to 6 months to put together the document and the application to take forward to CARPC. I guess they're changing their process a little bit, and we're going to be kind of a test pilot here that they're going to work hand in hand with our planning department through the neighborhood plan process. So once we get to the end of that with our neighborhood plan, that effectively, it sounds like, is going to be that application and that document then to submit to CARPC. I think we'll still need policymaker authorization, obviously, to submit it to CARPC, so there will be some formal action. But I'm pleased to hear that because I think that'll help to make the process more efficient on the back end to go to CARPC and hopefully expedite our request to get that added to the urban service area so we can kind of stay ahead of the development need for the inventory of land, not only for single-family housing and lots here in Fitchburg, but one thing I'll mention later is the need for additional kind of business park land from an economic development standpoint. So again, the value of some of those one-time TID dollars allowing us the resources to do a couple of these plans simultaneously is really positive for our community.
A question on that note, how long does a plan from start to finish? What is the length of time? Do you have any experience in previous years? You must. I mean, what do you expect? Is it a year, 6 months?
Well, that's, like I said, with South Stoner, the way that Deanna, our city planner, and Brad have it kind of in the timeline right now is to ask the consultants to show us kind of what is that scope of work to have the South Stoner Prairie plan kind of completed at the end of 2023. Okay. So what is kind of that process, including everything from their analysis of, documents and topography, engineering, all of those kind of things, but then also that public participation that kind of flows along and kind of map that out for us and show us how that can be done in kind of that time frame.
Okay, so
forward.
within a year, it's
Yeah.
reasonable. Yeah.
I think we learned from the Northeast Neighborhood Plan. That one went on multiple years, and it was like a never-ending kind of.
I was going to chime in and say it's between a year and 3 years is my experience.
Yeah, but in the Northeast Neighborhood Plan, I think we learned from that one to say, instead of leaving it open-ended, and it just kept kind of going on, we now, in the RFPs, kind of ask the consultants, okay, if we'd like to have it done in this time frame, show us the scope of work and how it can be done and what that process would be in that period of time.
Well, and I would think the collaboration with CARPC would, lack of better words, expedite it, or at least you have a collaboration there that they're familiar with the project and it's all moving in the same direction.
Right, and we're more in sync,
Right.
with them. So I think that'll be helpful. Like I said, with Greenfield, because there's more of a residential population base there, it'll probably involve more engaged public participation, as we kind of vet the concepts and ideas at the planning, consulting, and then the firm and the engineering companies that we work with. So that's in the ARPA TID, kind of investment plan. The other thing that's in there is a future update of our zoning code and our sign code, which again, we're kind of in desperate need of having that updated too. So hopefully it's ultimately the policymaker's decision, but from a economic development and CETA perspective, that would be helpful for us. I know one of the categories that Joyce and I struggle with is kind of, we've got industrial general, which is kind of your traditional industrial, not necessarily heavy industry, but kind of that clean manufacturing, light industrial and everything. And then we've got our IS, which is industrial specialized, which are those science tech companies, the Promegas of the world, fall under that zoning classification. But as the economy has kind of evolved and morphed, over the years, not everything simply or neatly just fits in each of those boxes, and sometimes there's kind of the crossover. And I know Madison had done an update to their zoning classification that they added like an industrial commercial section there that just offered more flexibility for the different types of uses that could go into that particular zoning classification. And we've been hearing that from some of our developers and also from some of the commercial and industrial real estate brokers. And one category of space that we really have a need for here in Fitchburg is in the office kind of flex space, where you have a front office, but then you have a larger flex area space, especially for science and tech companies, that could be used for everything from clean manufacturing, light assembly, kind of warehouse distribution. And we've lost a couple of small companies that have been here in Fitchburg, and a couple of them have relocated to Middleton by virtue of we don't have that space available. We have very little inventory in the kind of the industrial category that's actually vacant and available right now. So we've been trying to put the word out to various developers that that's a project and a product that we'd like to work with somebody on if we can find the right land area with the right developer to bring us some of that inventory. And then one of the last items that I just wanted to mention about the TID ARPA dollars is hopefully once the neighborhood plans are done, South Stoner Prairie and Greenfield, then the mayor's identified some funds available to do a major comp plan update. And again, that's something that would really be helpful from a community and economic development standpoint. When we did the last comp plan update in 2019, kind of 20, the scope of that was limited to the existing urban service area, and we didn't do kind of a full-blown comp plan update of the entire city of Fitchburg, both the urban service area and outside the urban service area, and maybe even kind of look at, are there other future urban development areas that should be identified that aren't currently identified on the map, and at least have that conversation and do a full vetting of that. So I was really pleased to see that that was listed as one of the investment ideas that's out there. Again, it'll be up to the policymakers to decide, but To me, that's a real priority as well. Dane County is the fastest growing county in the state of Wisconsin, both with population and economic activity. And just with that level of activity, these analyses, the neighborhood plans, the comp plan, all of these items would be really helpful for us in kind of the community and economic development world. Having said that, for the February meeting, one group that we might invite here, our partners at the regional level, MadRep, have been doing kind of a business park analysis, business and industrial park analysis. Joyce and I just got links to copies of it this week. We haven't had a chance to go through it, but somebody told me offline that Fitchburg doesn't show up too much in the report because we don't necessarily have a business and industrial park with some significant acreage that's available, probably like 200 to 300 acres that other communities in the region do have. So we're hoping to maybe invite one of the principals that worked on that analysis to give us an update and an overview of the findings. And this is part of a larger conversation that our friends at MadRep are having as far as how do we work regionally to position ourselves for different economic and industry sectors that are looking for places and spaces to locate and expand not only our existing businesses, but also on a business attraction front. So that'll probably be one of the agenda items for our February meeting. A gentleman, possibly by the name of Gary Becker, we're going to invite to give us an update and an overview of that. Then sticking with MadRep, February 7th, the Fitchburg Chamber is having a luncheon. And you might want to join us for that. It's going to be at Hop House and sign up for that one. It starts at 11:30. The president of MadRep, Jason Fields, is going to be the guest speaker for that lunch to give kind of a regional economic development and update from MadRep.
What were the dates?
It's February 7th, and it's at 11:30, and it's going to be at the Hop House. Okay. We did some communication. You might have seen there was a little panic this week with the change in the provider with the senior meals there. So our senior staff mobilized quickly, and we helped out a little bit with some business contact information, and they've come up with some providers to help fill in the gaps for the meal programs over the next 2 to 3 weeks as Dane County adjusts kind of the contract for a new provider going forward. So thanks to those businesses in Fitchburg that have kind of stepped up to help fill that gap to make sure that that pipeline of meals continues to serve our senior and elderly population. Then we might be looking at submitting community development investment grant. This would be through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. The community needs to apply for the grant, but it's basically for an economic development project with a partner. And the partner that we might be working with is our friends again at the Latino Chamber, and it would be for their reinvestment with capital expenditures on the renovation of that building that they acquired on Verona Road. And we could potentially receive up to $250,000. There's a 3-for-1 match up to like $1 million, and they would provide those matching funds with the fundraising and capital campaign that they've already done. So stay tuned for that. If we move forward with it, we're vetting it with the Latino Chamber right now. The application would have to be submitted in April, and we would need a resolution for the council to authorize us to do that. But we're working with them on that right now to determine if that makes sense. Then the other thing that'll be coming forward is we're receiving a TIF request from Avante Properties. This is for the lot in Uptown Fitchburg. It would be just north of East Sherrill Parkway, east of the railroad track. So it's west of the Vista apartment that's located there. And there's some soils issues there. And if we participate with the TIF request, they're going to be able to basically more than double the size of the building. It would be 57 units of market rate apartments, but then there would also be a small amount of commercial space there that would ultimately be a future cocktail lounge in that area. So it would start to bring some of those services that we all envisioned as being part of Uptown Fitchburg as we look at that being a more urban mixed-use development. So
sorry, Where was that location again?
It's in Uptown Fitchburg.
Right.
And it's just east of the railroad tracks and north of East Sherrill Parkway. And it's going to be called the Arlo Project.
There's some soil issues there?
Yeah. They have
really?
to take some soil off and then bring soil back on.
Sure.
And there's some other geotechnical issues, and our engineering staff is analyzing that, and then Ellers would be doing the economic pro forma analysis as they do for us, regularly.
Okay.
With that. And the developers already submitted their deposit for the TID analysis for that. So that'll be coming forward for decisions. Then one interesting, we've got Isomark, which is a company over by the Seminole Office Center. And they're a company that the technology came out of the University of Wisconsin, but they've got a breathing apparatus that they can use for cattle, that they capture a breath from the cow, and it goes in through this machine and filter, and then the light either turns green or red or stays yellow, and it'll determine if the cow is healthy or if the cow is sick. And if the cow is sick, obviously, then it allows the farmer to isolate that cow so it doesn't take out the whole herd and everything there. So last week, there was a really interesting kind of field trip. We went out to the Hinckley farm out in Cambridge and got to see a demonstration project of it in live action with cattle out there. So I got a chance to go out there. Senator Tammy Baldwin was there and a whole bunch of other folks. But some really cool technology. And that's, again, one of those quiet companies that's located here in Fitchburg that is in that technology space that we're continuing to work with. And hopefully it leads to, they're kind of going through their research and development phase here and are in the capital of venture capital, kind of campaign raising. But I'll keep you posted on that as they continue to make progress with their technology.
Hey, Mike?
Yeah.
I went to one of the meetings, open house, and not only animals, cattle, I mean, they're actually talking about being able to detect things in human beings also.
Right, eventually, yes.
Exactly. I mean, that technology is just outstanding.
Yeah. Well, and then lastly, on the housing front, just Highfield Reserve, infrastructure's going in. That's Fahey South. Viridian is doing that development, and they're already going to have some move-in ready kind of twin townhome duplexes in May of this year. So that's how quickly they move on that front. But as we try and stay ahead of the demand for, kind of single-family product and kind of townhome product, there will be new inventory coming there, and then there will be multiple projects coming in Terra Vesa as well with some additional townhome product over there. So we want to keep that going. And I think that's all that I have. Joyce, do you have any additional updates you wanted to add?
Yeah, I do. So earlier this week, you noticed that I sent out an email asking for your assistance in getting the word out that Dane County is doing a housing survey. Please share that with as many people as you possibly can. We're looking at, a regional approach to affordable housing. So everyone's feedback is essential. I believe the survey is open until maybe like February 9th, if my memory serves me correctly. So if you would please share that, we'd appreciate it. At the March Housing Advisory Committee meeting, we're going to be talking about our senior housing. We're going to have Jill with our senior center come and just kind of give an overview of the existing projects, what she's hearing as far as needs. I sent the housing survey out to the case managers for the senior center and asked them if they would work with some of their clients on the survey as well. So I'd like to get as much diversity and responses as we possibly can. And I think that's the only kind of update that I have. Oh, I guess Mike and I did respond to a request for information from MadRep in January. It came right around the holiday time, so we were able to submit a response. We haven't heard anything on that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. One question, would you guys like me to send out kind of the ARPA requests that the mayor released? Is there an interest in having that information or not?
Thumbs up here, Joyce.
Okay.
Council Chambers, yes, please.
Otherwise, it's right on the front page of the website, too.
Yeah.
And I just have a few more updates that I thought of here. One is Lacey Road. You know, we're doing the reconstruction from Seminole west to just short of Fitch-Rona Road. So the request for bids will go out at the end of January, and then we'll have the bid opening later in February, and then the project is projected to start in April. And as you might remember, there's going to be a roundabout there at Seminole and Lacey, and then it'll go just short of Fitch-Rona. So that'll be all done in one season, and it's important that that get done this year because remember we were successful in securing $1 million T grant with the job creation from Promega and Sub-Zero for that project. So we're kind of in year 3 of the award of that, and it has to happen this year for that grant program. Then a couple of other changes is the Wyndham Hawthorne Suites, the hotel at Hatchery Hill, the one between the two parks there by the Thirsty Goat. Was purchased. Dave Schutz sold that one, gentleman, Mr. Patel, and he is rebranding and reflagging that to a Choice Hotel Mainstay Suites. So if you're over there, the Wyndham signs are gone, and he's got some banners up as he waits for the sign installation for that product. Joyce has already been in contact with him, and then Angela, our Chamber Visitor Bureau partner, has been in contact with him as well. And then I'm continuing to do some outreach to our theaters over there. And then the postal USPS, I continue to try and do outreach to USPS on the contract postal unit station there, but have struggled and have frustrated as far as sometimes the slow response that we get back from them. But I understand they're going through a whole kind of national reorganization there. But we do have 2 businesses in that Fish Hatchery Road corridor that are interested in having conversations and negotiations with USPS to be the location for a CPU to bring back the one that we previously had at the Hallmark store. So we've shared that information with USPS, and they're supposed to be reaching out to those businesses directly. The 2 businesses I've checked in with have not heard anything, so I'll be reaching out to USPS again to say, hey, we need to jumpstart this process and get this going. It's been over a year. It closed in August of 2021. So it's been well over a year that we've been without that CPU, and we really need to get that process jump-started. But as the USPS has communicated to me, we as the city aren't involved in the direct negotiations. We can only kind of be that contact to facilitate the connection with our businesses, and that we have to kind of step back. But we at least need that connection to start. I'll keep you posted as we hopefully make some progress on that, because I know both residents and businesses have been asking about that.
I guess, Mike, I have one other quick update on broadband. I'm sure you guys have seen that there's been a lot of outreach about getting people to share information on their downloads and upload speeds to the FCC, as they just recently released new maps. And based on the mapping, it shows that Fitchburg has 100% coverage. However, we know based upon our surveys that we did earlier that that's not necessarily the case. So in an effort to share the data that the city has captured, we sent an email to the FCC with our data that we've collected and our mapping. And also we carbon copied the state organization as well. Not sure if it's going to do any good. We haven't had a response from anybody. So just wanted to share that we have made efforts. However, there's a lot of challenges with the whole broadband issue. So I'll keep you posted if I hear anything back or what the next steps are. That's it.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mike or Joyce? All right, seeing none, move on to number 9, announcements. Go ahead, Mike.
One last thing just to share with you. We've got 2 staff positions have been filled. Our city assessor position a couple weeks ago, Chris Leitz joined us from the city of Janesville. So he's heading that department now. So great addition. And then just on Monday of this week, a gentleman by the name of Tim Volker just started as our new public works director. So we've got both of those critical and key positions filled in the city of Fitchburg. Tim is coming via Florida, the Palm Beach coast side, but he went to school here in Madison and is from Watertown originally. So he's coming back home to Wisconsin. So 2 great additions for key staff positions at the city. So if you see them, they're on board.
All right. Any additional announcements? Otherwise, we'll move on to adjournment. Or
I'd like to have one brief one, and I want to thank CETA, the city, and Bike Fitchburg. We submitted on Monday our application to the Bike League of America about becoming a gold city. And this has been taking us 3 years to pull all this together, to get all this info, and we finally got it in. It was an 87-page document. But I think CETA heard about what our bike committee's doing and how we link with Bike Fitchburg, and the Common Council's heard about bike-friendly businesses. And even what we heard today with the Festival for Speed, it all spins together. But I think it's very important. So I want you folks to know you may be getting surveys down the road about responding, are we a bike-friendly city, from the league, not from us. So if you get one, please fill it out and send it back in. So we're optimistic we'll, in May, hear that we achieved gold. We're silver now. I'm sorry, I forgot to preface that. But thank you from everybody.
thank you for all your work you did on that.
It's important. I think it drives, it's part of the engine that drives the city, so.
All right, if there's nothing further, we can move on to item number 10, which is adjournment.
Oh, I guess I do have 2 more things. I'm so sorry.
I'll allow it.
We have the Houston proposal was approved in the budget. Mike and I received the contract yesterday. We'll be sharing that with our city attorney. So you'll probably be watching for a resolution to come through for approval of that contract. And, oh my gosh, now I forgot what the second thing was. Mike, help me. Oh. I'll think of it when we get done, and then I'll just email you. It's been a rough week.
Okay. Hang in there, Joyce.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Oh, I thought of it.
Oh, we got a motion on it.
Too late.
I met yesterday with the MadRep representative who's working on the annual publication. So I'll send out some information. We do have funding set aside in the budget. It was too late to get it on the agenda for this meeting, so that'll be something that we'll look at for the next meeting. So if you could please review the information. The prices have gone up, I would say, considerably over the last 3 years, but still a good publication. So those are the 2 things.
Okay, we have a...
Now I'm done.
All right, we have a motion before us to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.